Welcome to Litigation and Capital.
You're listening to Litigation and Capital with Stephen Mirsky, partner at Mirsky Corporate Advisors. Each episode, we break down high-stakes legal issues affecting companies like yours, those earning $10 million to $100 million a year, so you can turn complexity into leverage and protect what you've built. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and of course, I am joined by Stephen Mirsky. Stephen, welcome back.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate being here.
So we're going to talk about choosing the right partner today, strategic alignment before the paperwork. So it's an interesting topic. So what's the biggest legal mistake that founders typically will make when choosing a business partner?
I'd say that there's legal and there's practical. From the legal side, they don't formalize things, right? We'll get it done down the road, right?
It's all informal, yeah.
That's
We're
huge
buddies.
mistake.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, and also more to the point, if you fail to incorporate, then the law could treat that as just a general partnership, right? So that's a whole other issue. But I think there's the issue of, like any relationship, you got to date before you get married. Is there a real, true alignment of values, of ethics, of where you're at in life, where you see this thing going? Because it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, this dude is really great at building widgets, and I'm really good at selling widgets. We should go in as partners. But, if their lifestyle doesn't align with what you've got to do, that's going to create problems down the road, right?
Yeah.
You're going to spend more time with this individual or these individuals than you likely will with your own family, right? And so that's an issue. Another issue is, let's say your partners are family. Oh boy, now what do you do, right? Some of the longest disputes I've seen arise between family members.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me, actually.
Yeah. And, especially if you are dealing with a generational shift. Let's say I've got dad as the sole original founder, and now I've got, my brothers or my siblings that are now in the business, and we've all got some equity stake. Well, what could go wrong when dad passes, right? That is going to be a problem. What could go wrong if you're doing it with your wife? What happens if you guys don't get along anymore? Now what do you do? Right. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about. I personally love my wife, but I told her this is look, we've got to have autonomy in the business. You got to have autonomy of decision making. Do I consult her with everything? Absolutely. But there's certain elements where I think when you're dealing with family, you've got to keep boundaries. And so then that goes to the other personal question too, is do you have the personality to set boundaries? And if you don't, then you're going to need someone that can help do that. And that's where a lawyer could come in.
Mm-hmm. How can misaligned risk tolerance or vision show up legally down the road?
That's a good one. I mean, to a certain extent, you're going to want someone to have a gas pedal and a brake, right? Otherwise, if you have two people on a gas pedal, if you have a sharp turn, you'll fly off the cliff, right? And you don't want that. But there has to be, I think, more than the risk tolerance or vision, there has to be the ability to communicate openly between the partners. Partners stop working together when they don't trust each other, when they stop communicating, and when they're afraid of dealing with the elephant in the room. And so you can deal with the elephant in the room by litigating it, or you can deal with it by having a frank conversation. And, either way works for me. So
and that's true in like every relationship you ever have.
Yeah, and that's what this is. This is a relationship. At the end of the day, it's a relationship that's rooted on the premise of making money and not romantic involvement, but it's a relationship at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so, and then I think there's also clear expectations. And I think that goes into the risk tolerance or the vision. What is it that you expect from me? What is it that I expect from you? Are we aligned? And if the answer is yes, but we disagree on how we get there, then fine, let's just hammer that out. But if we're fundamentally misaligned, then the question is, why are you in this and how do you get out?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Fundamentally misaligned. Yeah, it's different than strategic.
Yep.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Obviously, when people, friends or family members, people that are going to get involved in a partnership, they're going with rose-colored glasses a lot of times. Maybe they don't see certain signs that things could be going towards a high conflict partnership. What are signs that you've seen that two people or multiple people might be entering a high conflict partnership?
If the skill sets are supplementary and not complementary. That could be a recipe for disaster. So what do
Okay.
I mean by that? Let's say you've got someone that's really creative and highly motivated and loves to do sales. And let's say you've got another person that's really creative and highly motivated and loves to do sales. Well, now we're definitely going to be a sales-oriented organization, and we're going to drive the bus that direction. Well, what about our ops and what about our finance team? No one is going to be paying attention to that. And that's what will kill your business on the back, right? So you've got to make sure that, and so then the issue will be when things break down over here, if we're both aligned in this one direction, no one's going to want to spend the time to fix it. And then they're going to blame each other on who created the problem.
Right.
Well, if you hadn't gone that deal, we wouldn't have had this issue with the POs, right? So there's that. And then another high conflict is if, they're too divergent in their outlooks, right? If you're just like, let's say one person is extremely outgoing and the other person is extremely introverted. How are you going to have honest conversations if the introvert's not going to want to open up, right? So you have to make sure, and again, this isn't legal per se, this is just sort of what I've seen. You got to make sure that you're working with people that you can trust and that align with your personality and skill sets. The best partnerships are those that, person is really good at A but not B, and person two is good at B but not A, right? Mm-hmm. That's where you can really get a lot of value.
Yeah. And are there certain clauses in a partnership or operating agreement that you feel are most critical if things kind of go sideways?
Yes. And to your point earlier about rose-colored glasses, when you're entering into a new business or an existing business and you're coming on board, it's going to be rosy. This is the opportunity of a lifetime.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, it couldn't get better, right? Where else would you do it? But you got to look at in the agreement, what happens if it doesn't work out? And so I'm just kind of spitballing here as it relates to like bylaws or shareholder agreements. How do you remove someone? How do you get someone to resign? Mm-hmm. What happens if we have to buy back their shares? How are we going to do it? What if we don't have the funds to pay them a lump sum? Let's say the company's wildly successful. And now the value of those shares are like, I don't know, $20 million. We're really going to pay this guy $20 million? That's going to hurt our bottom line. Mm-hmm. We can't do that. So, how do we structure these things, and can we have those conversations up front? And if you want to structure payments, then, there's ways to do it that are more advantageous based on the interest rate environment you're in at the time of signing. So that's what I would look at. I wouldn't, especially with removal, the statutory barriers are pretty high, convicted of a crime of moral turpitude. What if the guy's just a dick and you're tired of dealing with him? Like, I kind of want to have some cause in my contract, and I want to be able to deal with that. And so those are some things that you're going to want to do.
I was going to say the dick clause, but I think that's a terrible idea. I don't think we should call it that. I don't think we should call it that. If you get involved early, if someone brings you in early and you have a situation where you've got these two people that are, like we said, rose-colored glasses, they're excited, they're getting funding, they're just on cloud nine. How do you have these tough conversations with them? How do you facilitate them to have tough conversations with each other, like to avoid, at the beginning before anything has gone wrong?
So putting on my legal hat, I get to step out of it, right? Because let's say I'm representing the entity. I'm like, hey guys, I represent the entity. I recommend that you two need to talk about it. Here are some people you can talk to, mm-hmm. right? As a lawyer, I can step out of that because those are personal issues that are outside of the representation of the company. But that said, who do you talk to? Can they have the conversation themselves? Maybe, maybe not. If not, are there coaches that they could talk to? Are there programs like Vistage that they could join? Are there, you find like some sort of facilitator or mediator, just like you would like a family therapist. You need to have some sort of person to help them get through that. And then how do you balance the trust? You got to look at past actions. Have they done anything to materially mislead you? If the answer is yes, then that should be a red flag. If the answer is no, then you should give them the benefit of the doubt. And then the other thing too is you guys should always be partners, should always be talking about the business and looking at the finances. Review the balance sheets, review the financial statements, have those conversations. Don't rely on, low-level accountant A to do that for you. Right? You need to own that. And are you tracking in the right direction, or are you treating this as a piggy bank? Mm-hmm. Or if we're getting into a second generation or third generation business, what are we doing with all these kids that have been literally grandfathered into the business and are using it as a piggy bank. How do we deal with that? Those are all tough questions. And I think, again, you rely on the agreements, and you have to have the courage to say, we need to change something.
My first podcast I ever did was with two buddies. And when we tried to monetize it, I wanted to get an operating agreement together. And I talked to a buddy who's a lawyer, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about anything going wrong or anything like that. And he just started laughing. He's like, oh man, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. It's like everybody says that. And a lot of times it goes south.
Yeah. Where are they today?
Yeah. Well, it didn't go bad, but to your point, that was an issue for us, is that I did all the work and they didn't really want to do any of the work to try to monetize. So yeah, exactly. I mean, there is, like, you think that you've got these gung ho people and you have these conversations and you guys are all rah-rah and stuff like that. But when it actually comes down to doing the things you're supposed to do, that's when you have to say, okay, will everybody do it? And they might not.
Agreed.
Yeah. Are there legal structures that can sort of help de-risk early partnerships without scaring people off at the front end?
Yeah, and it just goes back to your entity of choice. Are you a corporation? Are you an LLC? If you're an LLC, are you member managed? Are you manager managed? Who's the manager? Who's the member? Are there other entities involved? So really, it's just, let's talk about what our objectives are, what we want to accomplish, and then let's pick the structure that's going to help facilitate that dream, and then we execute.
Okay. That seems like a fairly simple answer. Yeah. That's not too bad. When it comes to, advice, as in your vast experience, what is your advice for founders that maybe are unsure if their partner is built for the scale that they're chasing?
Again, it's not sexy and it's not legal. Just have the conversation. Don't be afraid. If you can't set these boundaries early, are you going to set them later on? And if not, are you going to expect other people to do it for you? Because that's just going to be more expensive and may yield results that you don't like. So be open and be honest. And if you can't be open and you can't be honest, then why are you entering into a partnership?
That's a great point.
Yeah, and it's common sense, but it's ego clouds judgment. And when you are running a business, you have to remove ego, because you are not, and a lot of business owners struggle with this, you are not the business, right? It's not an extension of you. The business is its own thing, and it needs to eat and breathe money. And unless it's doing that, then you're not doing a good job. So that's that. And then I think also the other flip side of this is, let's say I'm second or third generation business, and I need to figure out, well, how do I pass this baton? Before selling anything, I would recommend that you find people inside the organization that you can elevate, whether family or otherwise. And if it's going to be family, how do you make sure that those who are not family members are adequately compensated or heard, right? Because there's always going to be that natural tension between, family owners and people that work in the business that aren't family,
right?
And how do you appease all of them, to the extent that you want to? And because you're going to add more value to your business the less you're involved at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Do you often get called in late when it gets to that point, when the baton is going to be passed, or when a business is deciding what to do, like where you're just coming in like, oh God, like this is kind of a mess. I don't know what to do here. Does that happen to you a lot?
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to talk to a lawyer, right? And then, because again, they look at it as a cost. But usually I get the, hey, the LOI has been signed and these guys have problems. What do I do? Or, hey, we just got a demand letter. How do I respond? So I'm usually coming into it when we're already at an inflection point.
Right.
And so I guess to that point, I tell business owners, make sure that you have a relationship with somebody that like, and trust, and that you can rely on. Talk to them, as frequently as you want, but be proactive. Like, don't hire an architect when they've already started to lay the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And same applies here. Don't reach out to an attorney the first time once the stuff hits the fan.
Yeah. Oh, good censoring. Good job.
Yeah, I listened this time.
You're getting better. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on Litigation and Capital. To connect with Stephen or learn more about how Mirsky Corporate Advisors can support your business, visit MirskyCorporateAdvisors.com. And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share it with your leadership team. Got lots more coming your way. Stephen, as always, thanks so much for being here. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.